Hi there and welcome to another PSC Tuts Plus Spoon-Fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele, and in today's tutorial I'm going to take you through how to create a leather textured realistic briefcase icon. The original tutorial is by Andrea and it's over at psctutsplus.com, and let's have a look at this final image. We've got this cool icon here with really nice leather effect, some nice buckles, and it's a really cool little icon maybe you could use for any files that you're using for traveling or anything like that. So let's create this in Photoshop. I've got a file that's open at 512 pixels by 512 pixels. The color mode is RGB. I've also added a few guides so that I know where center is. And I'm going to head over to my color palette. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a dark brown 70300D, that's fine. And I'm going to come over to my rectangular and rounded rectangular tool, the second one in the option. I've set my radius for the corners to 10 pixels, and then I'm going to click and then hold down Alt right in the middle, or there or thereabouts. Okay, that looks pretty good. So there's the start of the outline of this briefcase. I'm going to rename this layer Main, and then hit OK. Alright, next thing that we need to do is we're going to change our foreground color, and we're going to set that so that it is 8B 493B. And then we're just going to double check my background layer. Yep, that's set to 672907. Let's click on OK. Let's create a new layer. We're going to go to Filter, Render, and we're going to render some clouds. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rasterize this layer. In fact, first I'm just going to duplicate it and just turn that off, just in case we ever need to come back to that file. And I'm going to call this one Main. And hit Enter. Okay, so I'm going to right click on my layer and I'm going to rasterize, get it nice and flat, and then I'm going to command click on it, come back up to layer 1 and just mask it so that it fits to that area. Alright, so once we've got that, the next thing we need to do is download our texture. You can find that file for free over here. Great site, Stock Exchange, to get textures, images, vectors, and all kinds of good stuff for graphic design. Let's drag that straight into Photoshop. It's going to be a rather large file, so I'm going to move this down, hold V, and just drag it straight into my document. I can close that down. Command T is going to bring up the free transform. I'm going to lock the height and our width, and then just reduce that down. Bring it up so we can see it, and just keep reducing that down so we get something like that. And again, I'm going to command click on Main, and we're going to mask that off. Okay, so now we've got our texture in place. The next thing that we need to do is set that to soft light, and then reduce the opacity down to 50%. Now, it's a little dark for my liking, so we're going to click on our layer here, not the mask. We're going to head up to Image, Adjustments, and Levels, and we're just going to move the white, just bring that into about 170, something like that. Looks pretty good. Alright, the next step that we need to do is we're going to grab our main layer down here, and we're going to double click on this and just apply some layer styles to it. The first we're going to add is a stroke, and again we're going to keep that at 3 pixels, nice and thick, set it to inside, multiply. The opacity we're going to keep, actually we're going to drop that down to 75%. And then the color that we're going to use is one of those dark browns, is 672907. And then let's click on OK. Then we're going to add an inner glow. We're going to come up here, and we're going to set that to normal. We're going to increase the opacity to back to 100. Noise is going to be 0. The color we're going to use is EE BBAC. Let's click on OK. we're going to set it to precise. We're going to set it to edge, 0, and then increase the size to 13 pixels. And we're going to click, and we can see that nothing's happened there because this layer here that I rendered my clouds in, I haven't merged that with my main layer. So what I'm going to do is just shift and grab that layer, Command E, and it's going to merge those down. I'm just going to relabel that main. And again, just really quickly, go back in there, add my stroke. Let's make sure that's set to 3 pixels on the inside, set to multiply. And the color we're going to use is 672907. Reduce that down to 75. And then head up to inner glow. And we're going to set our inner glow to normal. Up to 100. We're going to choose EEBBAC. Have it set to precise and increase to 13. Click on OK. Now we can start to see the outline of our briefcase. Command H will get rid of our guides and Command H will bring them back. So I'm just going to get rid of them for now so we can see what we're working with. Right. Next thing that we need to do is we need to duplicate our main layer. So I'm just going to bring that straight down here. And we're going to scale it down. So Command T. And I'm just going to bring it in to about there. I'm going to hit Enter. I'm going to right click and I'm going to clear all the styles from that layer. Then we're going to go back in and we're going to start by adding an inner glow. And we're going to set that to multiply, 54%, 0 in noise, and the color we're going to use is going to be 672907. Click on OK. We're going to set that to precise. Again, edge is fine, 0 for choke and 27 for size. Let's click on OK. We're going to head to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to set it to about 3 pixels. And let's click on OK. Right, the next thing we need to do is to go back to our main layer, and we're going to add a gradient overlay. So let's go back into the layer style, click on Gradient Overlay. We're going to make sure that the gradient overlay is set to multiply. For opacity, we're going to leave it at 100%, and then the colors that we're going to use is going to be transparent, and then we're going to go to that 672907. Click on OK, and OK. Yeah, let's have a look. Again, make sure 90 degrees is fine. Let's click on OK. And it's just slightly darker at the top and slightly lighter down at the bottom. Right, now we're going to work on the stitches. Now there's a number of different ways to approach this. I'm just going to create a new document, and it can be, that's fine actually, keep it on that. Going to come over to the color, set it to black, grab the rounded rectangular tool, and all I'm going to do is just draw a shape like so. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Define Brush, and we're going to call this Stitch. Click on OK, I can close that down. Alright, so we've defined our brush. We're going to come back to this in a second. We're going to head over to Edit, and we're just going to edit our brush palette itself. So we go to Window, come down to Brushes. This is just going to pop up. Head over to Brush, and we can select that now, right down at the bottom, like so. Okay, and we can play around with that and play around with the settings so that we get the final shape that we want, the spacing and so on. So firstly, let's set our diameter to 8 pixels. Let's come down to our tip down here. So 8 pixels. Let's have our spacing set to 500 or 550. Okay, so we can start to see in the preview how this is going to look. That looks fine. But let me just get rid of that. Oh no, that is joined, it's going to give me issues. Okay. Just don't want to make sure we don't lose any of our window here. Okay, so we're going to play around with our brush and we're going to rotate it a little bit later, but to start with, we're going to have everything set as normal, angle set to 0, spacing 550, and we're going to play around with this brush. So let's set the color that we want our stitch to be. Let's go ED, E9, AD. Let's click on OK. And we're going to create a rounded rectangle tool, and we're going to create it just with the path. And I'm going to have it just like so. And then we're going to head over to our paths. I'm going to rename the path, so just double click on that. I'm going to call it main stitch. And then back over in our layers, I'm going to create a new layer at the very top here. And then in that layer, I'm going to set my brush. It's already set, brilliant. Come back over here, right click, and I'm going to stroke the path. Make sure you got brush selected, uncheck stimulate or simulate the pressure, and click on OK, and then hit enter, and you should see we now have these dots. So I'm just going to zoom in just so we can see them. Let's bring this up. Okay, so they're all there. Now we've got them going left to right, which is fine, but now they're going horizontally as they go up the side, so we're going to correct that. And again, they look perfect going across the top. So let's just zoom out. And to make life a little bit easier for ourselves, I'm just going to zoom in. Let's bring that back up, just fix that. But what I'm going to do is grab the marquee tool here, and I'm just going to grab these, hit delete. Grab these bottom ones, hit delete. I think there's another one just there. Okay, come over this side, grab these, hit delete, and let's grab these and hit delete. Now I promise you they're there. I know they're a little bit hard to see, so I'm just going to create a new layer, fill it with black, and you can see they're all there. And these ones down here or here. Now, with these ones on the corners, okay, we need to rotate them to make them look like they're going up the side of our briefcase here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them. Command T, just start to rotate them a little bit. Ooh, let's make sure we're on the right layer, otherwise all hell breaks out. So again, let's grab that, Command T, rotate our little stitch, bring it over a bit, hit enter, and that's just starting to hit that corner there, and the next stitch will do the same. Let's have a look over here. Okay, so this stitch here, let's grab that. Command T, start to rotate it, maybe 45 degrees, or just see what feels right. And just going to nudge this up as well. Again, that looks pretty good, going around that edge, and then up the top. Let's grab that, rotate that. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, we can just see that one coming around there. And again, far left. Let's grab this and rotate it. Again, this is just trial and error, just playing around with it. I can see that one's not quite right. So I'm going to grab it. Just nudge it over a bit. That's a little bit better, but I know I'm missing one in there, but that's not too bad. Okay, let's zoom out. And let's bring that up. So that's the top and the bottom done. What we need to do is we need to do exactly the same, but we need to change it for the bottom. That's for going down the side. So the way that we do that, after we erase all those dots and dashes, is we come back to our brush tool here. I'm just going to bring that out. It's annoying me over there. And then come back to our brush, and we're just going to set the angle to 90 degrees. And you can now see that it's going to stroke any layer with these vertical lines of the brushes that we created. That's all we need to change. It's going to keep the spacing the same. I'm going to move this to the side, and I'm going to select my path again. You can right click on it and go to stroke path, but we need to create a new layer and set our color back to, I think it was the EB color, yep, ED. Oh, make sure I'm in the right place. ED E9 0, sorry, AD. Getting all my numbers and words mixed up today. Click on OK. We've got that color selected. So with that color selection, we can start to apply this change in brush. So as I said earlier, we had the angle set for this brush to 0. We just changed it, or changing it to 90 degrees, and keeping everything else the same. We can now see that that brush is going to be applied vertically, which is exactly what we need to go up the sides of this case. So I'm just going to move that over to the side, and then we're back on our layer. We're going to go to new layer. I'm not sure where that layer went. And on this layer, we're going to come back over and grab this path. We should be able to right click on it and go to stroke the path with our brush set up. Click on OK, and you can see that it's done. Let's go back to our layers, turn on the black. We should be able to hit enter, and there we go. And we can start to apply those. Now I'm not sure why the other layers aren't 100%. I'll go back and check that in a second. So I'm just going to zoom in, because these are the top parts that we're going to be getting rid of. Let's bring this back up. So I'm just going to grab my eraser tool, get it nice and big, and just get rid of these parts here. Okay, so apart from the opacity there, I must have had that set on a lower opacity. Photoshop giving me a little trouble today. That's all. It must have been the brush that I used. Okay, that's fine. We can remedy that really quickly. So I'm just going to get rid of that layer. Stick that layer in the bin. Create a new layer. It just shows you how quick we can do this. Bring the brush back in. Let's come back down to the brush we used, set it back to 8 pixels. Angle was on 0, 550%. Yep, let's double check, 8 pixels, angle on 0, 550 for the spacing. Let's move that out of the way now. Whoop. Oh, freezing up on me a little bit, Photoshop. Come back over to our path, select that path, and we're on that new layer. Yep. And we can just right click, stroke the path, and use the brush tool that we've got set up. Click on OK, and that's brilliant. And then with the eraser tool, we can have a look at anything that's affected. Okay, they're still the wrong way around, so that shouldn't have been the case. Run that new layer, get the brush tool up here, set to 0, 8 pixels, 550, that's much better. So now it's going along like that. In our brush tool, we're on our layer 6, which is our new layer, and I should be able to stroke the path. Oh, getting a program error. Let's try that again. Brilliant, and we've got it back. So, sorry about that, got a bit confusing there with my brush and my eraser, and I'm just going to get rid of the ones going up the side, and we're going to have to spin those corner ones just to make sure they all line up. Okay, we're going to get rid of this black layer as well. Back to our layers. Okay, and there they are. So, like I showed you before, we can start to change the angle of some of these. We can go in, we can grab the selection tool, select a corner, transform it, just going to rotate it this way. And if it's got a wobbly mark, a patch, it doesn't really matter. We're going to cover up this top part anyway. But it's just to give you an idea of what you can do. And again, if I just grab this layer here, again, just little rotations. Make sure you're on the right layer. There we go. Command deselect just to make it look like it's moving over like the natural stitch would. Okay, I'm rambling a bit here. Let me just quickly do this one. Okay, it's not quite perfect, but the stitches aren't really that perfect. Okay, so that's our stitching pretty much done. We've erased those sides, we've rotated our corners. Okay, so what we need to do now is create a new layer. And sorry, we're going to apply some layer styles to those stitches. So the first thing that we need to do is let's merge these two layers together, and let's call this stitches, and click on OK. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a Bevel and Emboss. So double click on that layer, come down to Bevel and Emboss. I'll try and speed this up a bit more. In a bevel, set to smooth, 100% is fine. We're going to be heading up in direction, and 5's a little high, we're going to set that to 3. 0, 120 degrees is fine. Yep, use global light. 30 degrees is fine. We're going to set it to screen and white. 75 is good. Multiply. Let me bring this up, and let's set that color to 672907. Click on OK. And multiply, set 75 as well. Yep, that's all fine. Okay, and then what we're going to come up to is our drop shadow up at the top. We're going to make sure that's set to multiply. Black again is fine, 75 is fine. Reduce that down to 90 degrees. Let's turn off, use the global lights first, and go 90 degrees. Oops, not enter. So that's set to 90 degrees is fine. Distance we're going to set to 1, 0, and then 0, and 0 down the bottom. That's looking good. Click on OK, and now you can see the little bit of shadow, and they start to look a little bit more realistic, and I like the look of those. They're looking good. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to add some reflection on our case. So we need to draw a rectangle, a rounded rectangle down at the bottom. So select that. Actually, let's set our color first. We're going to set that to CEA 295. let's click on OK. So with that color selected, we've got a rounded rectangle tool, and we're going to just draw this in around the bottom. Again, this is trial and error for where you want to have that place. I'm just going to come back to the original tutorial and show you the area we're talking about. It's just down here, the bottom of the leather, because leather is slightly reflective. So I'm going to come back and just select this area here. Okay, I'm going to go right click, make it a selection, and just fill that in. I'm going to not do it on that layer. I'm going to do it on this layer here, and then deselect. We're going to set that layer to screen, and we're going to reduce the opacity down to 40%. Head up to Filter, Gaussian Blur, and again we're going to add a 3 pixel blur. Click on OK. Then what we're going to do is we're going to enter Quick Mask. So we just hit Q on the keyboard, and you can see now it's gone back into black and white. And we're going to grab the gradient tool, and we're going to go from black to white, and we're going to go from bottom to top. Not too much. I think that's fine the first time. Hit Q again. And then we're going to adjust the opacity and blur where needed. Okay, so we just applied that as a mask. It just takes off the bottom part, so it's not quite so harsh. Again, we can go Filter, Gaussian Blur on our layer, and just blurs those edges that little bit more. Okay, so if you're following the written tutorial as well, we're up to about step 11. We're going to be drawing our vertical line now down the middle. So I'm going to bring back on Command H, our guides, and I'm going to grab our Ellipse tool, and I'm going to set this for now. Just going to set it to black. Okay, so we're going to draw a vertical ellipse right in the middle, and this is going to represent our pockets. So I'm going to create a new layer. Nice and thin. Like so. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to right click, make that a selection, click OK, G, and just fill it with black. Command deselect, and we're going to go into that and apply a layer style. So the layer style we're going to do is a gradient overlay. We're going to set it to normal, 100, and then we're going to come down to our gradient overlay. And the first color we're going to set is that 672807, and then we're going to go to a color of 1F OC 0C, sorry, 0C 0C. Click on OK. We're going to set it to radial. Make sure we've got a line with layer selected. 90 degrees is fine, and we're going to increase it to about 150. Okay, you can start to see that taking shape. Right, now we're going to head up to Bevel and Emboss, and then inside Bevel and Emboss we're going to make sure it's on inner bevel, smooth, 100% is fine. This time we're going to be going down. Scale is going to be set to 5, 0 is fine. We're going to have it set to 52 for our angle, 32 for our altitude. Okay, that's all fine. Then we're going to have screen. We're going to set to 48 in a second, but the color we need to set is CEA 295. Click on OK. Reduce this down. What did I say it was? 48. Next one, multiply is fine. We need to change this color to 672907. and 50% for that. Let's have a look, starting to look pretty good. Let's head over to outer glow, and we're going to set outer glow to normal. 63, 0, and the color that we're going to use is our CE A2595, sorry. Let's click on OK. Have it set to softer, 0, and increase the size to about 16 pixels. Let's have a look. Okay, it's not too bad. Might be a little bit thick, but that's going to be okay for now. And let's click on OK. Command H, and let's show that. So it might be a little bit too thick, that pocket, but I'm just going to carry on. I should have made my ellipse slightly thinner. It's going to make those pockets look kind of big. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to draw our flap. Okay, and to do that we're going to use the pen tool. That's going to bug me now, that little pocket in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it down like so. I think if I Command T and bring this in, because those layers have been applied, yeah, it's not going to look good. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. Okay, make sure you make yours a little bit thinner. We're going to draw this flap now. Head over to our pen tool. And where am I going? Here we go. So with the pen tool, we're going to draw this shape. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to start in the middle. So I'm going to start about here. I'm going to come over to the side, and we're going to end up going just over the edge, so about here. That looks pretty good. Coming down the side. Like so. And then we're going to come in again just under the middle. Like so. You can alt click on that end and then join us up at the top. Let's grab a color, so 682908. Let's click on OK. I'm going to right click inside. I'm going to fill our path with our foreground color, 100% opacity. Click on OK. Right, duplicate that layer. Command T, right click, flip it horizontally, move it over. I'm gonna Command H to get rid of that. Bring it over. Right click, flip it again. And that's all aligned very nicely. Grab those two layers, merge them, Command E, V on the keyboard, and just nudge them left and right, just looking at these edges, but that looks pretty good. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to call that layer flap, and let's hit enter. We're going to apply a gradient overlay to that, so again we're going to double click on this layer, head over to gradient overlay, and make sure it's set to normal, 100%, and then this time when we go into our palette, we're going to move these colors just over, just a little bit like this, and the first color we're going to set is going to be 7A321, 7A3215. Let's click on OK, and then this second color, we can set that to CEA295. And let's click on it, move it to the side. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so we've got that kind of top bending part going on. So it's bending over the back. Make sure it's set to linear, make sure it's aligned, 90%, 90 degrees and 100%. Okay, let's click on OK. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come down to our texture layer, down here. We're going to duplicate this. Okay, now we've got like a crocodile leather going on. That looks pretty good. But I'm just going to drag this up above our flap. Okay. And then I'm going to Command T, right click, and then flip it vertically just in case we get any lining up down here of our textures. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this mask. And that way it's going to line up perfectly with this layer. Okay, next thing that we need to do is we need to add some thickness. So we're going to copy our flap layer, bring that down here. Okay, and then with the copy we're going to move that below the original flap layer, and let's call this flap thickness. Okay, and then with the flap thickness, move below. What we're going to do is just nudge it down just a little bit, like so. We're going to go back into our layer styles. We're going to give it gradient overlay, and we're going to set it to screen and 50%. Drop shadow. We're going to apply multiply, change the color to 672907. 75 is fine. 90 degrees, and we're going to uncheck global lights. So 90 degrees. 7 for the distance, 0, and then 10 for the size. 0 and check, that's fine. And let's click on, oops, yeah. 52, no, that's 90. And let's click on OK. And that looks pretty good. Let's just nudge it down just a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Then we're going to right click on it, on the thickness layer. And then what we can do is we can create for some reason we can't set this. Oh, we need to right click on the actual effects themselves, and then we can come down to create layers. I'm not sure you can quite see that on here. I wonder if we come up here. I'm not sure where it is in the main menu, but if you right click on your actual layer effects themselves, down at the bottom it says create layers, and what it does, click on OK, is it creates individual layers for each of the effects that we put in our layer styles. So what we want to do is command click on main, it's all the way down the bottom now. Okay, and we want to come down to thickness drop shadow, and we want to mask that just to make sure that we don't have any overlap over there. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. So the next thing that we need to work on is going to be some stitches for our flap. We're going to do that, excuse me while I move my notes, in a very similar way as we did before. Start by excuse me, command clicking on our flap layer. I'm going to create a new layer. We're going to go to selection, we're going to go to modify and contract. We're going to contract it by about 6 pixels. Click on OK. It's going to bring that in. 6 pixels, no magic number, just just playing around with it, how thick we think they may have left the leather on the sides before they had to stitch the case or something like that. Okay, and then head over to paths. Should have the working path here. So now we've got that path. We can go back, and then we need to think about setting up our brush. So again, we're going to be using that same brush as we used before. We just need to make sure that for this selection, it's all the stitching is going to be going the right way. So to stroke the path, we need to go back to our brush. Let's bring that over. And we're going to set it back to 0. Okay. So you might have had it on 90 degrees from doing the previous one. Obviously I made that error and I already set it back to 0 degrees because I had to do the sides, the bottom part again. So I'm going to move that over here. We've got that set up, our brush is set up 8 pixels again, 0 for the angle and 550 for the spacing. And then let's go back to something like our pen tool on this layer, and I'm going to right click and we're going to stroke the path. But first, I just need to set that color again. Okay, and that color, if I can remember correctly from before, was that CEA 295. Nope, that wasn't the right one at all. Let me just double check. There it is. ED. So many numbers. EDE 9AD. There we go. Click on OK. We want them all to be the same color. Right click, stroke the path, brush, and let's click on OK. And let's have a look. Command deselect. And you can see now the stitching goes along here and then goes up the sides. And what we're going to do is we're going to erase the vertical lines again and then manually rotate around the curves and then stroke again, just like we did before. So I'm going to zoom in, grab my eraser tool on that layer. These ones look okay, that's not too good. Like so. Oops, let me just make sure we can see everything here. Okay. Right, let's grab the eraser tool and just get rid of these guys on the side. Grab the brush, set it to 90 degrees, bring that over again, go back to our path, select the working path, back to our layers. I'm going to create a new layer. Pen tool, right click, and I'm going to stroke the path with that brush. Again, that's not working. Let's make sure we go back to brush. Right, the angle didn't stick. Okay. Stroke the path, there we go. Back to our razor tool on this new layer, and we can just get rid of these layers. Now, it doesn't matter if it's not quite perfect, because remember it's just stitching. I'm going to grab these layers here. Command T, just rotate, shift it up a little, hit enter, deselect, grab this one here, Command T, rotate, hit enter, deselect. That looks pretty good. Okay, it's not bad. I might just reduce the opacity, just so these tie in a little bit better. Let's zoom out and have a look, and that looks pretty good. We've got a little bit of a drop here. I didn't spot that when we modified our selection, but overall I think it's not too bad. Okay, so once we've done that, I'm gonna group these two together and just gonna merge them down, and I'm gonna call that flap stitch. Okay, Command H is going to bring up our guides, and we're going to start to work on this buckle. So I'm just going to zoom in on this area in here. Let's just move this up. Okay, and we need to create with a nice yellow color. I've set that to F565 and rounded rectangular tool. And I'm going to start, just click in the middle here, hold down Alt and Shift, and just create a nice rectangular buckle shape, like so. Going to come right up to the top, create a new layer. I'm going to right click inside here, I'm going to fill this path. Let's just make it a selection. Click OK, G, click inside and deselect. Then just going to zoom out slightly just for positioning purposes, V, and we can start to see that is very, very big indeed. So Command T, just going to bring this down just to get an idea. Eventually these are going to be over here, so that's pretty good. I'm going to hit enter. Although that might still be a little bit big, but I'm going to carry on as we are. So I'm going to call this flap, or just our buckle, I guess, for now. And we're going to move this below our flap thickness. So let's come right down here, down to our flap thickness, put just above our shadow, like so. Okay. And in fact, let's just call this the lower plate, and we can group all of these at the end. Let's double click on this, go to our layer style, and we've done a lot of these. We're going gradient overlay, set that so it's on normal 100%, and we're going to set this up again like before. Going to bring this over to the right, about there, and let's set this color to B8 8F41. Click on OK, and then the last color over here, I'm going to set that to FEF794, and let's click on OK. Let's have a look at how that looks. Looks pretty good. Just wondering why we're getting some of that texture through there, but we'll leave that for now. Let's add a drop shadow, and the drop shadow is going to be set to multiply. We're going to change that color over here. We're going to set this up to 672907. And again, 75% is fine, 90 degrees is fine. We don't want that to be checked. 305 is fine. Looking okay. Let's head over to stroke. Let's give it a 1 pixel stroke. We want this to be inside, and we want it to be on normal, which is fine. 100 is fine, and then this color, let's change that to FAD, FAA. Click on OK, let's move it to the side. Okay, it looks pretty good. And let's click on OK. Now, I'm not sure why. I see. So we might need to just bring that down. I wonder why that's not applying. Put that back to soft light. There we go. Just double check some of that. Yeah. So what happened there was I hadn't set my texture so that it was masked by the previous layers. So what was happening was it was being applied to our buckle layer, this lower plate as well. But I've just taken that off, and we've got our lower plate, and it's looking pretty good. So we're going to copy this layer. Let's drag that down here to new layer. And we're going to call this upper plate. And basically what we need to do is we need to move this one above all the other layers right to the top, like so we can see the full part of that. And then with the marquee tool, we're going to get rid of any of the excess. So I'm going to grab my marquee tool. Okay, my marquee tool. Now I just noticed the gradient here, and we need to flip that for our lower plate. So come back down to our lower plate. I just didn't check in the gradient overlay, just check the reverse sign, click on OK. We'll see that will take shape in a second, and that leaves our upper plate with this gradient in the same way. So I'm going to grab and just get rid of this area up here. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to get rid of this area down here, and just hit Delete, Command Deselect. Okay, so what you find is that inside our upper plate, in our gradient overlay, we haven't checked our reverse sign for our gradient. So that means it's lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. And then what we've done with our lower plate is I did set that to reverse in the end. And now we have the light stuff at the bottom and the dark stuff at the top. So it creates a bit of a shadow for us, which is nice and easy. And just click on OK there. We're going to go back into that upper plate and layer style, and we're going to play around with a few more things. With the drop shadow, let's click on that. We're going to set the opacity down to 30%. Okay, we're going to come down to stroke. We're going to set stroke down to about 50%, just reducing all the opacities. That looks pretty good. And click on OK, and there we go. It doesn't stand out, quite so much there. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to make a smaller copy of our lower plate. So let's grab our lower plate, duplicate that, and this is going to be the lock part. So Command Transform, and hit Enter, and there we have the little lock that kind of clicks in. And then behind the upper plate, let's come up there to the upper plate, we need to draw a brown ellipse for our straps. So new layer, and these can be these little strap bits that are attached like a little leather circle, attach the buckle to each of the pockets. Come over to our ellipse tool. We're just going to draw a nice little ellipse. I'm going to start about here. Let's just undo that. Try again. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, so draw out your ellipse tool, and we're going to call this our strap. So we need to fill it with dark brown. So I'm just going to grab any old dark brown off our image, click on OK, going to right click, make it a selection, G, and just fill it with that layer. Okay, like so. Command deselect. So we've got a generic brown strap layer. And we need to copy our layer styles from our main. So come all the way back to our main, right click, copy the layer style, all the way back up, right click, paste the layer style. It's going to add that in there for us. But we need to go in and just make some reductions. So double click on our layer style, head to our inner glow. We're going to reduce that down to about 20%. Noise was fine. The gradient overlay, we need to reduce that. So we're going to set that to normal. 100 is fine. And then with this, I'm going to bring this over here. Going to set that color to 6B 29 OB. Click on OK. This is going to be white. Click on OK. Click on OK. Again, starting to take a shape. We want that to be linear, which is fine, checked. 90 degrees, and then 100 is fine. Come down to stroke, 1 pixel instead of 3. Inside, 35. And let's have a look. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, we've got a little bit of a white area up the top up here. So I'm going to come back to our gradient. Just going to get rid of that just a little bit. Like so. Just by dragging that straight up. And then we click on OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move this underneath our upper plate. So it's just going to come out the edge. And then I'm going to add some stitching. So just like we did before, I'm going to make a copy of this layer. Okay, Command T. Just bring this in slightly. Go on, Enter. Then I'm going to make a selection out of that inner layer. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to grab that color for our stitch, which was ED E9 AD. Click on OK. Come over to our paths. Let's come back. Our selection tool, right click, make work path. Okay. So it's kind of wobbly, but again, that's okay because we're using our stitching. It's meant to look natural. And then what we want to do is set up our brush really quickly. So let's set that back to 0. So they're all going to be going round. Okay, that's going to be fine. Back to our ellipse tool. I'm going to right click inside. I'm going to stroke that path. Set it to brush, click OK, Command Z. One thing I didn't change about the brush is that it's far too thick. So let's set it to 2 pixels. Let's actually set it to an angle of 90. 100 for roundness is fine. Spacing, let's reduce that down to 500. Oops. Okay, that's much better. And let's put that angle back to 90. Back over to the side. And then we can right click, stroke the path, brush. Okay, you can see we've got that kind of stitching going on in there. I'm going to grab this layer, just bring the opacity down. Command H. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move all of this over to the left. So the layers that we need are the upper plate, Command click, there's 7. Yep, the copy, the strap, not that layer. Going to come down to our buckle somewhere down here. If we can find it. Okay, lower plate again. Fine, have we got upper plate? Yep, V on the keyboard. We can just start to nudge that over to the left hand side. I'm going to duplicate those layers and nudge them over. Oops, a little bit too far to the right hand side. That looks pretty good. Okay, this leather's a little bit lighter, but that's not to worry, it still looks pretty good. Z, and let's alt click. Let's have a look at this. Starting to take shape. We've only really got the handle to work on, and then that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all of these layers, stick them all in a big group, and then create a new layer. And this is where we're going to start working on our handle. So we're going to create 2 small little brass buckles, which are going to go at the top. We're just going to use a rectangle tool for that. Okay, I'm going to create a nice yellow color. I'm going to zoom in up here, like so. Command H, bring back, just to get some idea of where center would be. And we're going to create these two rectangles. So first one we're going to create is going to go here. And the second one is going to go here. In fact, why don't I just do one at a time and then we can always duplicate it. So we create that, and I'm going to right click, make it a selection, G, and just fill that selection with that color. Deselect, come over to our layer style once again, gradient overlay, and we're going to make sure that's set to normal, 100, and then the colors we're going to use are going to be EA, BG, sorry, B6, 53. Click on OK, and that's going to go across to triple F 995. OK and OK. Let's have a look. That looks pretty good. Make sure it's set to linear. We can uncheck the align with layer. 90 degrees is fine and 100 is fine. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to V, Alt select that, and then just move it along. Like so. Then we're going to create the little brown bits which are going to go underneath the bottom down here. And again, we can just use the rectangle tool, and these are going to go underneath. So I'm going to create a new layer here. Let's just call this brass 1, brass 2. I'm going to call this holder because this is going to hold it in place. Okay, and with the rectangle tool, we're literally just going to draw one. Select the dark brown tool, AF8066. Let's come back up. Right click, make that a selection, G, and fill it. Okay, and then again I'm going to alt click that and just drag it over like so. It's a little bit, they're a little bit too big, so let me just nudge that one back left. I'm going to get rid of just a little bit of it. Come back over to holder 1. Move that to the right a bit, and then just get rid of this little area here. Command deselect. Okay, it looks pretty good. And then underneath our buckles. Now we're going to create our handles, or a handle should I say. So we need the rounded rectangle tool. So I'm going to come right up here, or just underneath our brass, because we want these to be on the outside. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this handle. I'm going to grab my rounded rectangle tool, and I'm going to set it to 5 pixels. 10 is a little bit big. And we're going to draw this right across. So I'm going to start about here and just bring that across. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to just make this color. Choose one of these darker colors from our bag. Right click, make a selection, G, fill it with that color, Command deselect, Command transform, and then in free transform I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to warp, we're going to set it to arc, and then the bend we're going to set to around 20. That looks pretty good. And then hit enter. V on the keyboard, I'm just going to bring it down just a touch. Okay. And then we're going to add a layer style to that. So double click on that layer. Lots of layer styles today. And we're going to add a satin layer style. We're going to set that to multiply. Set the color to 67290. Click on OK. 50 is fine. 90 degrees. And then 13 for our distance. 7 for our size. That's fine. And invert is fine. Inner shadow up at the top here. So our inner shadow is going to be set to normal. The color we're going to use is going to be FAD, FAA. Click on OK. 75 is fine. 90 is fine. We don't need global light. And then 3 and 3 for our distance. Oops. And our size. And click on OK, and that looks pretty good. Okay, let's zoom out and have a look. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. You can add a little shadow at the bottom, but for the time it's taken, it looks, and the final result looks pretty detailed. I'm pretty happy with that. I struggle with a few of the little settings here and there, just little shapes are just slightly off, but overall I'm really happy with that. So I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through Andrea's creating a leather textured realistic briefcase icon from psttutsplus.com. Hope you enjoyed that screencast. Please check out the others over in our video section.